Awesome. So let me just introduce us. Hi, it's Jane Tabachnick, and we're here doing PR for Introverts, how to overcome fears and concerns and feel comfortable in the spotlight. And I'm thrilled to have with me Michelle Molitor of Nectar Consulting, executive coach, mentor, and rabble-rouser. And also with me is Andrew Shulkin of Indigo New Media, content marketing, interactive media, and communications maven and genius. So
that's what genius
awesome.
looks like. Oh, okay, cool.
Tall as well. Or maybe that's how he's sitting. You're looking very tall there, Andy.
We all sit up taller in our
Yes,
it's
inspiring. Super. So you all know that PR is a favorite topic of mine, and it's also really melding into content. Andy and I have spoken about this. I've actually written a post for his blog about this, and Michelle's had some great success recently with PR, nice placement on CNN, and pretty exciting.
Yes.
Creating some additional credibility for her and her consulting practice. But something that's interesting that's come up for me recently in some of the work that I've been doing, and Michelle and I have had some conversations about this, is that PR also brings up the fears people have and concerns and actually stops them from sharing their gifts, their business, stops them from promoting themselves. So we thought it'd be great to have a conversation about this as well as what you can do about it, because PR is still one of the best things that you can do for your business. The media is still a trusted source, and so you can take advantage of free PR and get that instant credibility transferred to you. So it's a really valuable thing to use. So if we can just help a few people today overcome some of their fears and get comfortable putting themselves out there and growing their business, I think we'll be doing some service to the world. So,
Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop.
Michelle, do you have a silly pill today?
No, I just like being of service. That's all.
Good. So tell us.
So hi everyone, my name's Michelle Molitor. My company is Nectar Consulting, and I am a business coach, consultant, leadership development coach, and I work with smart, savvy leaders to help them get out of their own way, essentially, and fully step into their talents, their passions, find their voice, and be of service in the way that they're really called to be of service out in the world. And you know, fundamentally at the heart of my work is helping people move past the limiting beliefs, the internal conversations that we have that hold us back, that keep us small, that stop us or keep us spinning in circles, and really allowing us to move forward powerfully. So this is such a great conversation for us to be having, because I've seen it just as recently as last night in one of my clients. So it's a very important topic, and it's something that a lot of people are challenged by, because we don't know what we don't know about what PR is always, especially as solopreneurs and small business owners in particular. And so hopefully today we'll be able to answer some questions to help folks go, oh, well, that's not so scary, and it's not really a bad thing. So why don't I step into that a little bit more?
Awesome. Andy,
Hi,
would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Andy Shulkin from Indigo New Media. We do website development work and content marketing. So usually we're working with clients to build or rebuild a website, and then help them figure out the right mix of tools to leverage that website and actually see some sort of a marketing return on it. So that typically includes social media, search engine optimization, blogging, SEO, pay-per-click advertising, whatever works for them, given the resources they have in-house, what resources they want to throw at it externally, and what their goals are.
Awesome. So, while we're talking about PR, we're really having a conversation about business and promoting and growing your business. I think, as Michelle and I have talked about, and Andy and I, to some extent as well, these issues show up just as business owners, even for employees, for anyone really in life, they show up. And a lot of it is just really the biggest fears we have in life. I think I just saw the list again, and I think the biggest fear that people have is public speaking, which is kind of a broad umbrella. I think under that comes, fear of exposure, fear of humiliation, fear of being judged, all those kind of things. And that's not just about PR, but I think it really comes to the forefront when we talk about publicity and trying to deliberately put yourself in the spotlight, because it brings up all those fears, like the spotlight, being the center of attention, having everyone's eyes on one is a very confronting thought for many people, and it stops them from doing what they need to do to grow their business. And it's kind of ironic because it seems to me everybody's on social media, or the perception some days is everyone's on social media, everyone's sharing, everyone's trying to make themselves more visible, but that's actually not really the case. And I saw a great quote today. Someone said that social media or Facebook was people putting out, I forget exactly how they phrase it, but putting their best reel forward, their best selves forward. So they're editing and curating what you're seeing. You're not really seeing the real thing. But when it comes to PR, I think sometimes the fear of losing control comes up because you can't necessarily edit or put your best foot forward. The media is going to decide what they write about you, or what picture, sometimes what picture to show. So you may not have the option to have any say in that, and you may not like what they choose, the picture they choose, or exactly how they position you. And some would say there's no such thing as bad press, but nonetheless, it brings up all these concerns and feelings. So where do we start? There are all these sort of related kind of feelings. Michelle, as someone who digs deep into our minds and helps speak to what we call those gremlins, right?
Yes.
Or the lizard brain?
The lizard brain. It's all a function of your amygdala, which is the central part of your brain, and it's the back part, your lizard brain. Essentially, that's your fight or flight or freeze mechanism that is supposed to protect you from, being attacked by saber-toothed tigers and whatnot. And unfortunately, no one has told our amygdalas that the saber-toothed tigers aren't out there anymore. And so when stress arises, that fight or flight or freeze mechanism gets triggered and can leave us deer in the headlights about how do I move forward, how do I make the right decision. And so taming that is essential to anyone's success. One of my favorite clients has named her Amy the amygdala, and so it's important to learn how to manage her, because you're not going to get rid of your amygdala. It's not going anywhere. And so noticing what are the conversations you're having with yourself that are getting in your way. So first and foremost, noticing, well, what do you make up about PR? Is it difficult? Is it hard? Is it scary? And just noticing those conversations that you're having with yourself that are potentially keeping you from putting yourself out there, putting your brand out there in a way that serves you and helps to grow your business. So awareness is the first step. And oftentimes most people are very unaware of those conversations they're having with themselves. So a big part of my work is really helping them stop and notice. What am I telling myself, and is it disempowering or is it empowering me to move forward and to get my work and be of service in the world?
Super. I think that's such great advice. The first step, just to notice what you're feeling and what's stopping you. Andy, any thoughts?
The one thing that comes to mind in this kind of conversation is much more specific, I think, but still sort of interesting. And we frequently have conversations with clients in which we're reminding them that they're experts. You know, when we're talking about content marketing, what they're going to write, and who's going to bother reading this? Is anyone going to read this other than my mom? And conversations along these lines. And this nervousness to put something out there, and trying to get folks to realize that if you've got a successful business of any kind, or are successful on any level, it's because you offer value to a group of clients, and those clients are looking to you for information. So that can be the basis for PR or content in any number of guises. But just remembering that, hey, you're pretty good at something, and that's what you should be focusing on when you're putting content out there.
That's such a great point. Michelle and I were actually talking about that earlier today, about how people sometimes start to question whether they're really an expert and whether people will see them as such. But you're absolutely right. If you have a successful business, then clearly you're successful as a subject matter expert in that area. So, and you don't have to have a business that is in a particular niche to be an expert in that niche. There are different ways that we gather expertise and can be considered experts,
Yeah, and the thing, too, to remember is that success is defined by you. We're easily caught up in comparing ourselves to others. Oh, I'm not successful yet because I don't have a business that's at this level or this level or this level. But there's always going to be someone who's more successful than you, and there's always going to be someone who's less successful than you. So once again, it comes back to what's the story you're telling yourself, and can you sit in your own awareness of your own expertise and own that you're successful as an expert, and be willing to share that with others.
That's great. And I'm glad you mentioned the word story, because publicity or public relations is really about stories. And the best stories are about people. So it's not necessarily that the media is covering the top expert. If you tell them that and you're not the top expert, that's a problem. So you want to be careful about how you talk about yourself, because journalists are pretty savvy people, and you don't want to BS them or state something that's not the case. But you can be an expert, and there are different levels of expert. But basically what they're looking for is either a story about you, how you've done something maybe that's different than how other people do it, how you've achieved success, the path that you took, which may not be everyone's path, but it is a path, which is an interesting story, or just sharing some tips and expertise that you have around a topic, whether it's mobile marketing or building websites, whatever the topic is, tips that would be useful to someone. Maybe it's someone just starting out in the industry, not someone who's very advanced in the industry, but they all have value. You could also be commenting on a current news story, putting your spin or your sort of take on it. So there are so many different ways that you can contribute to publicity as an expert. And again, you just want to be careful to represent yourself in the proper light, but give yourself credit for what you do know and what you bring to the party. And I think that's really part of what to keep in mind. And, really kind of having goals in mind when you set out to do publicity. And basically you want to tell your story, share your gifts ideally with your target audience, because why else, unless you're just seeking publicity, in which case, if you're so comfortable with publicity, you probably wouldn't be listening to this conversation. But, publicity gives you the ability to get in front of your target audience, often at no cost, and it's such a great vehicle. So I say try and have fun with it. If you can identify those little challenges and find a way to be comfortable and enjoy telling your story in a new medium, it's a great opportunity.
Well, and that's a terrific point, Jane. I think the thing that we forget about is that people relate to people. People don't relate to businesses necessarily. They're looking at the heart and the soul. And so when you can tell your story from the place of the challenges that you've overcome, that you've converted into your passions, your purpose, your way of being of service in the world, people can relate to that, and that helps build your credibility, and it helps build trust and trust in the eyes of your potential users or clients, and creates that affinity. And that's really what you do through PR, is create affinity with those that you're trying to reach. So clearly understanding who it is that you're reaching out to is really, really important. Understanding what their problems are, so you can speak into their listening, as I like to say, you know, the what's in it for them, and get them to see, like, oh, okay, she knows what, or he knows what he's talking about and has been there and can help me move to that next level. And, you know, of course, it's all dependent on what kind of product or service that you have to offer, for sure. But really making sure that you're finding a way to connect with your potential users and clients is really important.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know about you, Michelle, but I know I was raised with the following. My mother used to say it's not polite to brag, and also that it's not polite to talk about yourself, which kind of goes counterintuitive to being an entrepreneur and seeking publicity. Did either of you? Absolutely. Okay, Andy, was that something that you were told, or is that a girl thing? I think Andy's having trouble with his video.
Oh, absolutely. That's absolutely.
Okay.
No, I think, well, it may be more prevalent, but that's certainly something I was raised to be taught.
Okay, so that's something we all then have to overcome to some extent.
We hear you.
Sorry.
He's fading in and out. We hear you though, Andy, or we did for a moment. So.
So I think, you know, looking at that conditioning that it's not polite to brag or talk about yourself requires a paradigm shift. Instead of thinking of it as talking about yourself, as sharing your gifts and helping provide some kind of knowledge or tools to people who might be able to benefit from them. So it's not so much about you, but about the knowledge, that you can offer and how other people could benefit from it in a non-salesy way. PR is clearly not meant to be an advertisement or an advertorial, as some would say, but in fact, the goal is to put out good information, connect with people, and by virtue of doing that, you position yourself as an expert. People naturally will see you that way, and then they will come to your website to check you out or follow you on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those kind of places. So just positioning yourself and putting out great content is how you start to build that community and tribe.
Absolutely. So, and I want to pull apart for people the difference between sharing your expertise and bragging, right? We have that negative connotation with bragging, and that's really based from a place of ego, like, I'm all that, check me out, right? You know, but it's not about that. It's just really sharing valuable information for people in a way that's accessible to them, and shares the different ways that your information, your services, your products can be of use to them, that raises an eyebrow, that creates a conversation starter for them, that has them want to lean in more and learn more about what you have to offer. So if we can, you know, help people with anything today, is like, it's not about bragging, it's just about sharing the expertise that you have to offer, and as a former coach of mine once said, it's about making new friends. It's not about selling anything. It's just about making new friends.
That's a great way to put it. Any thoughts, Andy?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting how all this aligns so perfectly with everything that we talk about when it comes to content marketing, where you're not talking about yourself, and there really isn't any ego involved. If you're thinking along those lines, then you're getting it wrong, because the goal is, as Michelle said, to make new friends. You're really out there to offer information that's of interest and of value to your audience, and if in the process you can paint a solid picture of your expertise, that's great, but it's really not about you and your accomplishments or what your company does. It's about what benefit there is for the audience, member, who hopefully then becomes a client of yours, obviously.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned the word friends, Michelle, because I think people sometimes get intimidated by journalists, and I'm not suggesting they all want to be your best friend and go out to lunch, etc. But the truth is that journalists are people, and if you look at them as individuals and really get to know what they like in terms of what they write about, what social media they use, because a lot of them are very social, so how they like to be pitched, whether they like it by email or they prefer you send them a tweet. You know, some of that information is available online, so if you do your homework and find that out and treat them like you would a good friend and respect their time and spend time getting to know them, it really goes a long way in terms of helping you get visibility and work with them. And I think it's less intimidating to think of them as a person. And they're actually people who need all of us, because they need stories. And if you've been following what's going on in the media world, newspapers are really shifting. They're cutting down staff. So journalists are really challenged. So they need fresh content. Some of them now on 24/7. So it's round-the-clock media. They need content on a regular basis. So if you know what they like and need, who their audience is, and the kind of stories they use, and you could put together something like that to pitch them, then you have a really good chance of getting media. And they really appreciate it if you've done your homework, because so many of them get what they call pitch off topic. And what that means is if a journalist covers sports and you pitch them a fashion story, it's clearly a misfit, and it means they hit delete, and if they see your name again, they're going to just hit delete without ever reading it. So they do have blacklists. You can get pissed off and banned for life, and they do talk to each other. So that's not something you want to do. In fact, if you can make their job easier, since they're so stressed and overworked, and do a great job pitching them, which is following what I just said, doing your homework, learning what they write about and what's of interest to them and of interest to their audience, then you stand a chance of getting publicity and of them then coming to you as a source, because they know that you're reliable and give them what they need. So make their job easier. So hopefully that makes it a little bit less intimidating thinking about working with the media. And what I wanted to say along those lines is also, you know, if you're someone who's camera shy, getting media coverage doesn't mean you have to be on camera. I know that's one of my least favorite things. So you can actually choose, you know, you can be like a J.D. Salinger type recluse who's never seen on camera if you choose, but you can still find great ways to get publicity in print, on the web, doing guest blog posts, that kind of thing. So, you know, you don't have to go totally out of your comfort zone, but hopefully we're going to help you stretch it a little bit to help you accomplish more, get more visibility, and easily attract your ideal kind of clients. So how do we start doing that? How do we start to get out of our comfort zones? We already said that first we need to know what makes us uncomfortable and what's going on in that amygdala. Am I saying it right?
Amy. Just call her Amy.
Amy, the lizard brain. What are those conversations, the things we say to ourselves that stop us?
Oh, there's a whole myriad, but some very popular ones are, I'm not smart enough. I'm not expert enough. Who am I? Someone might judge me. I'll be out of control. How do I keep it contained? There's a lot of different ways that we keep ourselves stuck inside of our comfort zone because we fear what's outside of it. But what I know from all of my work over the last 14 years of being a coach is that stretching beyond your comfort zone is the place where growth happens. And it's uncomfortable, right? Because it's a little, you're unsure of yourself. But as you move further out there, then you start to find your footing and realize, oh, okay, this isn't as scary as I imagined it to be. Because oftentimes it's much worse in your mind than it actually is in reality. I mean, I know so many people spend more time worrying about doing the thing on their list of things to do than it actually takes them to do the thing on the list of things to do, whether that's promote themselves, build a website, write an article, do an interview, whatever that might be. And so when you notice that there's this conversation going on in your mind, like, okay, really, what am I really afraid of? And oftentimes our fears boil down to a wanting of control, a wanting of approval, or a wanting of safety. And so if you can figure out, am I just wanting control, learning how to realize, well, actually I don't have control over much of anything, mainly my body, but even sometimes that we don't have control over, right? So, you know, understanding that these things are an illusion essentially, and using that as a way to quiet the fears and do it anyway. I always say, you never know until you try, you never know until you ask, right? I can ask, and if someone says no, well then, okay, they said no. But if I can try, and I might succeed or I might fail, but at least I tried, and now I have something to learn from, and it helps me to move forward, you know, in one way or another. So it's a continual process of personal growth and development, really, especially as an entrepreneur, to keep moving outside of your comfort zone, to try on new things and find the path that works most effectively for you to create the success that you envision for yourself and your business.
One of my favorite quotes is, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone.
Yes.
Not always easy, but that's where the good stuff starts to happen.
Exactly. And truth be told, is over time, the limiting beliefs that we have that have shown up from various experiences we've had in our life from the day we were born to now as adults, they slowly take on a life of their own in your subconscious and guide the choices that you make. And if you don't practice being mindful of them, they will start to make your world smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you're like really uncomfortable inside your comfort zone, and something often happens to kind of smack you upside the head and help you get outside of your comfort zone and pop out to a whole new level. And sometimes that's hitting a brick wall, sometimes it's an illness, it's an accident, sometimes, you know, it comes in so many different forms, but honestly, at the heart of it, our spirit is always expanding. And if we try to keep it confined for too long, it's going to kind of tap you on the head like, excuse me, we need you to get out and do this now. And so our hearts and our minds and our spirits will find a way to help us expand outside of our comfort zone, sometimes even if that's kicking and screaming.
Indeed. And, you know, I think at the heart of some of that, the control thing is also a perfectionism, which is kind of control. And I think, Andy, you can probably relate to this with some web development projects where people are always tweaking the content and the copy, and they just never seem to feel that it's good enough. And so the projects stall, and left to this kind of thinking and way of operating, they might never have a website. You know?
All too often we experience that. It gets expensive for us, or expensive for the clients, or sometimes expensive for both of us. But yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught in the spin of, oh wait, just one more, just
we're at it. Yeah.
Adjustment. You know, I was a creative director in web development in my former life, Andy, and so I know that oh too well. And it's wait, no, make it blue, no, make it green. Oh wait, change the logo again. You're like, just make a decision, right? And making is challenging in and of itself for some people. Like just choosing and letting that be okay, and see what happens on the other side of it. I was just having this conversation yesterday with not one but two different clients about I'm really bad at decision making, and that boils down to trusting yourself, or if you're working with a group, trusting the team enough to make a choice that moves things forward. And especially in a team environment, you have to have everybody on the same page so that you know where you're pointing the ship. So making decisions that take you in that direction is really, really important. And it's not always easy to get everybody aligned, is it, Andy?
No. Too many cooks.
Oh, yeah, that's painful. Very painful, especially when designing websites.
Indeed, a challenge. So what other fears come up? What else stops us? I have one, actually. This was an interesting one. I was having a conversation with a client recently. This really surprised me. It wasn't one that I had thought of, but they were afraid that if they started putting themselves out there and doing PR, that the trolls would come out and post mean or, you know, troll-like comments on the blog post or on the media site where they had the, you know, the media, the story or were mentioned, which I thought was really interesting. So, you know, it shows up in different ways for all of us. And I know for myself, when I've had someone post something mean online, you just the initial reaction is kind of like, ouch. And then you think, well, who is that? It's maybe a person. They're hiding behind an online profile, so you don't really know who they are and what their agenda is.
Well, here's a great thing about that. When people post mean things or unkind things, particularly in the social media environment, they're doing that to try and level the playing field and make themselves feel better. So 9 times out of 10, the comment that they're making has nothing to do with you. It's them pushing away something they don't want to see within themselves. And so they try to make you bad and wrong so they can feel better and puffed up and, oh, I'm okay. So that's a great way to get past the fear of the trolls, which are a close cousin to Amy, the amygdala, I'm sure. And that you got to realize that's just other people's stuff. And don't take on other people's stuff. You got enough of your own? We all got our own stuff.
That's a great way to look at it. It's someone else's stuff, and it really isn't about you. So true.
Yeah.
But boy, sometimes when you see that in black and white, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I get it. It's like,
How about when there's
okay. What, Andy?
What about when it's less personal and more, even if it's not factual or accurate. If it's corporate criticism, that's more typically what our clients are concerned about as well. If we get out there on social media, then we have to monitor it and make sure people aren't saying bad stuff. And the standard response is, well, they're saying bad stuff anyway. It's just a matter of whether you're there to listen to it and react. Do you have thoughts on that, or how best to?
Yeah, well, what you said is key. Are you listening and are you reacting? Because they're trying to get a rise out of you and creating some kind of response or a reaction, right? So I always tell folks, how do you want to react versus respond? So a reaction is that knee-jerk reaction of, oh, wow, that was mean, and we fight back in some way, shape, or form, versus responding is, okay, I'm going to take a breath, I'm going to see what I really need to say that is going to respond in a good way and keep me or the company in a place of integrity about themselves and the work that they're doing. Because oftentimes you don't want to lower yourself to that negative level that someone is trying to pull you down to. And so it could be as simple as sharing gosh, thank you for expressing your concerns. We'll look into that. Or we'll, see what's valid about that, or whatever, because again, it's their opinion. And the other side of that coin, though, is perception is reality. And so depending on the size of the organization or the brand personality, so to speak, you have to manage the perceptions of what's going out into the press, into the media. As Jane said earlier, all PR is good PR, even if it's bad, because it brings a brand front of mind. And so while there may be negative press that's occurring, you want to think about, okay, well, how do I help manage the perception of this organization in a good way based on the company's values, their integrity, their mission, their vision, etc. I always tell folks, when you can use your values and your strengths and your core passions as that guidepost as to what you're doing in the world, the service that you're providing in the world, then it's easier for you to stay true to you. And what's true for you isn't always true for everybody else. Doesn't mean everyone's going to like it or agree with it. So they can have their opinions, they can have their different perspectives. Welcome that and keep doing what's true for you in your spirit and your purpose in the world.
Great.
I have a slightly different take on that. I mean, I do agree with what you said, but I think, the thing that scares or has scared companies about social media is that they can't control everything. Mm-hmm. And it's an effort to monitor it and look for those kind of situations. And I also see those situations as a potential opportunity for companies. Maybe it's just an impossible client. We've all had them, people you can't please, and that you're better off firing as a client because nothing makes them happy, and whatever you do, they'll demand more. So it could be that case, and they could just be a troll, or they could be someone with a legitimate customer service issue. Well, it's true, right? They could be a troll. Yeah. I see Michelle laughing here. But the truth is that there are times when companies fall down on their customer service, and the only way to get satisfaction, unfortunately, is to go public. I mean, I haven't taken to social media, but I've actually called the CEO's office and made friends with their executive secretary because customer service and everyone else down the food chain was not helpful. So sometimes these people are frustrated and they're actually pointing out a problem and an opportunity for the company. So you could actually take an opportunity like that, not just to learn and enhance the way a company operates, but to demonstrate you're providing great customer service for that person and turn it around into something that then gets shared virally and people say, wow, this company is responsive, what a great job, and turn it into a story for yourself. So obviously it's a lot more work having to manage all of that and to monitor it, but I think you have to look at what opportunities are being presented to you and see how to make it a win-win. And if it is just a troll, maybe sometimes either to ignore it or just to make some polite type comment, say we've already addressed this with the person, and then just move on and never, of course, engage with them or get into any kind of unpleasantness, because that is just not the way you want to go.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunities, lots of time. So we're getting along in the hour. I thought it'd be great to give people some additional tips on how to take advantage, whether they're an introvert, they're shy, or they just have some reservations about being in the spotlight and getting more visibility. So what tips can you give them in addition to the great tips you've already given them?
Let's see. Just remember that you're sharing your passion with the world in whatever shape or form that looks like, and don't think about it as I'm going out to the whole entire world. Just think, oh, I'm just going to have a conversation with my friend Jane, right? I can do that and take that information and share it out in a broader context. But it's all about mastering your mindset, essentially. And if you tell yourself it's this big hairy thing, then it will become that. But if you just think like, well, it's not a big deal, we're having a conversation, writing an article, whatever, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because really what is perfection? Nothing is perfect. Nothing. So we're all perfectly imperfect, and you always can try again tomorrow. So just keep trying, and with each step forward, you make more progress, and you learn something too.
That's great. I love that. Andy Shulkin.
I think maybe the last piece of advice I would give, and it ties into what Michelle just said there, is, or at least for me on the personal level, is just do it, and understand that it's not going to be perfect, and you'll look back at it and say, I wish I had written that differently or thought about this differently. But for me personally, the planning aspect is really important. That if I feel I'm really well prepared, that I've done a really good job of researching an article I've written or I'm writing, and I'm really prepared for a webinar or something, it makes it go a whole lot easier. And that, for me, that's important. I think other people prefer flying shooting from the hip, but you've just got to do what you're comfortable with.
That's great. I love that. And I would say, I think I mentioned it, but I just wanted to reiterate, think about what are the really big things that scare you. So if it's being on camera that you aren't ready for it, maybe never want to go, then make sure that you're not either responding to publicity opportunities that would put you on camera, or that you are working towards putting out stories that are in print, on the web, on blogs, so that being on camera just never becomes an issue. You can always say no to that opportunity. So look for where you're comfortable. Think about trying to stretch your comfort zone a little bit. If you take baby steps and find you're more comfortable doing something a little bit different, a little more bold than last week, next month you'll be a little bit more bold. So if you take it in baby steps, I think you can grow and become more comfortable. And one of the easiest ways to get publicity and really not feel rejected is if you use the free source Harrow, helpareporter.com, which Peter Shankman started, or SourceBottle, sourcebottle.com, which is out of Australia, but also has a US branch. Those are both what I call matchmaking services. So what they do, if you're not familiar with them, is that they are basically services that send out emails. You can subscribe for free, and it'll send an email to your inbox on a couple of times a day with journalists who are putting together a story, and they need an expert, they need a quote, they need some thought leadership, and all you need to do is respond back by email if it's a fit for you, and you can get some great publicity that way. Occasionally there are some TV opportunities that come through Harrow, but if it's not within your comfort zone, don't respond. But this way, it's the easiest way to get quick publicity because the story's probably already been green-lighted and will be running soon, and no one's going to send you a rejection letter. If they're not interested in quoting you, you just won't get a response back. They may quote you without speaking with you, or they may email you or call you if you've given your phone number, which I highly recommend, to ask you for more information or clarification. So it's a great way to get publicity, and I think it's low risk. And most of us are used to responding to emails, talking on the phone, so it's not something that you're not used to doing. So if you just think of it like that, you're talking to a new friend on the phone or a new business acquaintance, then I think you can start doing publicity and have great success with it. So that's what I would encourage you to do, to just try and have fun with it and just try and share your gifts and your talents and get in front of more people. Any other parting thoughts before we sign off? This has been great.
Yeah, no, I think you really hit the nail on the head. You just gotta take one step at a time and do your best and keep trying a little more every day. Eli's here to help us out too. Say hi, Eli.
Oh, hey, Eli.
He's my assistant today.
He likes the spotlight, clearly.
Yes.
Thanks very much. This has been great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me see if I can get our contact info on the screen here. I'm not promising anything. Great. And I'm Jane Tabachnick, and you can find out more about me at janetabachnick.com. It's a cut and paste, so I'll spell it real quickly. It's Tabachnick. So thanks for joining us. It's been great. We'll be back with another Hangout real soon. Thanks again. Here's to your publicity success. Bye-bye.